Guys, if you guys have not seen this yet, feel free to check it out. It's available on Sega Saturns everywhere. Everywhere. An instant classic. A whole family can enjoy. Virtual Casino for the girls and the boy. Da, 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 oh god. Oh god. Whenever you start singing at the same time, it throws off all my rhythm because it's like a delay.
Oh yeah, well that was the problem. I was trying to rhythm with you. Da 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 da
Which one's better? Can you even pick a favorite child? Ted Bundy. Who's better, Ted Bundy or Billy from Stranger Things?
Hello, Zach. How's it going? Everybody out there in the watching this video, also hello, welcome.
Yeah.
How are you though?
All right.
Yeah.
Still reeling after that extremely wicked, shockingly evil, and vile video we just did.
Wow, what a great plug. Anyway,
it's like 2 months ago now or something.
Yeah, that was like one of our first videos.
I just can't get over it. So good.
Just can't get over how random it. Well, also, I can't get over how random it was.
We overhyped it, by the way. I think like in the Spider-Man one, we were like, this one got a higher rating, and like we actually gave it an 8 out of 10 overall. I was like, oh.
What? Incredibly Wicked? You mean?
Extremely Wicked, yeah.
Oh, okay. Incredibly, whatever.
We were like, that one had like an 8.5.
Sorry, John Malkovich, and sorry the judge who was in the actual trial. I can't quote you exactly. Okay, so we're here today to continue one of our other series, the Things That Define Us series.
Yes.
So this is we both like lists so much. It's a perfect way each get 5 in. So today we're going to be talking about animated television shows. Our top 10 animated television shows.
Fun fact that animated television shows are not actually television shows because none were found in our list before. And when it was top 10 TV shows.
Yeah, we basically arbitrarily segmented them out.
We should have said live action TV shows initially.
We should have probably. We could change. You could change that on that.
Well, if we could rewrite history, yeah.
We can actually.
Well, I don't want to get propaganda in here.
Oh. So, I mean, it is a little arbitrary, but I feel like we both felt like we needed to separate them out because I know, in my case, I'm a huge animation fan, and even though they're both different art forms of telling a story, and I like animation a lot more than I like live action stuff. But there's a lot to appreciate about both, and I think that giving each their own category kind of helps us a little bit. Spread it out.
What is an animation for those at home who don't know? And they're like,
wow. Okay.
Like, what is an animated show?
Let's not even begin to touch that one.
So animation includes all realms of animation, just so you know.
Okay.
So we're dealing with a mixture of anime, cartoons, anything you want to put in here, claymation, Legos.
Oh,
in motion.
You immediately, with one of those things, you've actually already changed something on my list. So I'm not lying.
What the hell?
Something's
Changed.
coming out, going in. Yeah.
Oh, Robot Chicken found his way in there. Okay.
Nope.
It's the only. Okay, Play Fighter.
Nope. You'll just have to see.
Was there any possibility we have overlap for the first time on this list?
We might. I don't know exactly, but we could.
I don't know. We're gonna keep it unique. We're gonna keep it fresh.
We'll have to find out.
We're two very unique individuals. We will never overlap on anything.
We might. It's tough to say because like I know I'm still, like I just said, one of my answers just changed. I'm having a hard time just deliberating over like what, because
What?
I've liked so many animated shows, but like I don't know if I would. I'm trying to parse and separate out ones that I just love or are my favorites, as opposed to ones that were like foundational pillars in my childhood and are foundational pillars now, in different aspects of myself that I like, or different aspects that I myself enjoy in animation and everything like that. So
That's the dilemma I face every week or every time we do these.
yeah.
This one actually, there was like a couple I was upset that I couldn't include, but overall it was a lot easier for me to do this than some of the others. It came a little easier to me. Like there are distinct ones that are like you need to be on there, and then at that point I just went back to the model of like trying to cover everything that would encapsulate what I like about animation, what I like about TV,
Hmm.
entertainment in general. So, with that being said, who should start this thing?
I'm gonna leave it up to you since you already asked. So what
You'll,
is your number? What is your? This is in no particular order. So what is one of yours? Your top five?
by the time I finish, you'll have switched your list around accordingly.
Probably.
All right, so this one had to be there. I feel like I usually start with the ones that are like no question for me,
Hmm.
and this one is little known anime Dragon Ball Z.
Very cool.
So this is a definitely like a foundational one for me in terms of especially anime. I'm sure I never would have gotten into anime if it weren't for Dragon Ball Z,
Hmm.
and it was like an essential part of my childhood. Literally, it was just big a part of my vocabulary. It's it's just like you would just talk about these characters. It's just a given, and I became so intimately aware of the plot and everything that that's something I would connect with like people at school and stuff. Like even my best friend and I would literally when we would wait for the school bus, we would be having Dragon Ball Z fights in real life. We'd be doing Kamehameha and we'd be throwing Destructo discs at each other. That's what we'd be doing. Like that
Nice.
that kind of like encapsulates like nerdiness too. Like one of the
Oh,
early
totally.
nerdy things about me too. And the fact that it's so successful and it's so mainstream now as far as anime goes too. And it's a testament to how good, how iconic it is.
Mm.
But yeah, it's like it maybe not like a fundamental in any part of things like any like genre of animation or things like that I like, but it's fundamental and defines me in that it literally defined my childhood a lot in a lot of ways, and defined like a trajectory of me getting into anime in the way I did, and kind of embracing nerdiness too. Like literally,
Mm.
Dragon Ball Z fights was like that's
I,
a breakthrough.
I used to do the same thing with Pokemon.
Yeah,
Sixth grade.
for
Sixth
sure.
grade, we were me and a friend, one of my best friends in elementary school. We used to pretend that we were Pokemon trainers and stuff. And it was fun.
We would do that
We
too.
had a good
Yeah.
time.
So yeah, I don't know if there's any more to be said. It's just that it's a timeless anime for me. I feel like I need to watch it again. Like
Mm.
it's one of those ones that's stood the test of time, to where there's a lot of shows I watched early on that are only just the kind of vague memories. That I just like I know I like that, but I don't know the intricacies of it. But Dragon Ball Z, I can tell you all the different sagas, the different plot points, the different characters, and
Yeah.
still enjoyable to this day.
It.
I'm actually not. All that being said, I'm not even caught up on Dragon Ball Super at all, so I need to get on that.
Yeah. You know, it's funny. I didn't really start getting into Dragon Ball until within the last maybe year, because a friend of mine and I went through Dragon Ball Z Abridged,
Hmm.
and while we were in the very beginning of it, I was like, this is my jam, because I had known basically. I just know tons of stuff about Dragon Ball just through,
The zeitgeist.
I guess, yeah,
Yeah.
of anime culture, sort of. It's just
Out there.
stuff about Dragon Ball just because of Dragon Ball Z, more the Dragon Ball really. But you know stuff about Dragon Ball Z just from people talking about it, just from people who are into anime.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of just have a general concept of it. And it's it's a sci-fi plot, and it's also like a lot of the shonen tropes that people see these days. Escalating power, escalating stages of fights and stuff like that. So yeah, I mean, I had known like tons and tons about it, but then when we did that, I was like, all right, I need to actually like get over myself and like really get into Dragon Ball, because I've always appreciated Akira Toriyama as an artist, and I've always really appreciated what Dragon Ball Z did to, particularly in the West, how it catapulted it to anime to more of a less anime convention. We're in a back room somewhere watching this subtitled thing because that's the only people that are interested in it, into like now there's whole huge convention halls that are just filled with anime stuff. So
Yeah.
yeah,
And there's just so many iconic things about Dragon Ball specifically that are recognizable to people who are not even near the realm of anime too. It's like just the Super Saiyan look itself, the over 9,000 that, that was a very big part of early internet days.
and I've even delved now into a little more snobbery Dragon Ball too, where like stuff with because there's a whole thing about I don't think there hasn't really been one good like home release of it in the West. I don't think, like, one that basically every home release has issues in some way or another. The old orange box DVDs were 16:9, and they cut out a lot of visual information because they're literally stretching the image to fit a widescreen TV. Some of the other random releases had issues. The most recent Blu-ray release has issues. They started to release the true version. They were a little bit more expensive sets, but they didn't sell particularly well. And I get on a whole other tangent about this, but yeah, I'm kind of I'm one of those like people that really want to watch Kai more than. Once I get through all of Dragon Ball, I'm gonna start with watching Kai instead of Dragon Ball Z.
Ooh.
So, yeah, that's just my own personal foibles with it. But
Ooh.
I can, yeah, Dragon Ball, very popular. So I totally understand that. That's really cool.
But all that being said, with like the mainstream, like it's just being known for like almost the memes of like over 9,000 Super Saiyan, like just screaming a lot in matches and fights, like fights lasting forever.
Yamcha being a horrible person.
Yeah, even with all that, there's a lot. If you really look at it, there's just so many cool moments, and there's a lot of badass moments. There's a lot of actually emotional moments too, where you really get attached to these characters, and
Yeah.
even across several seasons, it manages to stay pretty strong throughout. I mean, people have their preferences on sagas, but generally there's always something to like about each one.
Mhm.
And just there's a reason the characters are so beloved, and
Yeah.
it's just its reputation precedes itself.
Yeah. Actually, I think the first time I became a little bit more into, and I looked into Dragon Ball was back when Kai was airing on TV, because I saw like one of the first, probably the first or second episode, when like Goku just dies, and then the whole cast is just getting like emotionally responsive, and I remember myself being like, oh, like I was like getting kind of emotionally invested in it. I was like, all right, this is really interesting.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it definitely does have it definitely is cool, and what it does,
and really,
how it
it's
does that.
the way the story progresses. It's so crazy to think about too. Where you look at the Saiyan saga with Raditz, and the idea of power levels is really just, it's done so well. Where you can see how much has changed if you look at season 1 with Raditz all the way to the Boo saga at the end. It's like the power is so visible, and they do such a good job of showing progress in these characters.
Hmm.
That's crazy. I love it.
Cool.
Yeah.
So, to chart my own anime course, one of my foundational pillar in anime was Naruto.
Okay.
And like
There it is.
many people in the mid 2000s would know, Naruto was everything in that period of time. That was like for the 2000s. So the 90s was Dragon Ball. That was the probably one of the first big waves of anime getting catapulted into the mainstream.
Mm-hmm.
Naruto was that for the 2000s, I would say. It's to the point where like you can still go into stores, like comic stores and stuff, and find tons of Naruto stuff. It was the first show that I started to watch where I was really drawn to how it really was narrative driven. It wasn't necessarily episodic, but it was very narrative driven. There's another show on my list that's kind of the same way, but this was the first one that got me really thinking about anime as in watching anime. I'm keeping off my list. It's one of my favorite animated shows of all time. And I would say it's kind of a pair to Naruto, but Naruto, because of its long form, and I got into reading fan translations of the manga before we got any of the anime translated and dubbed. I got into AMVs, anime music videos of Naruto stuff. My friend David was the one that got me into it, and it's inextricably, like, anime to me, like me getting into it is just completely inextricably linked with Naruto.
Yes, yeah, Dragon Ball Z and Naruto, definitely the gateway drugs into anime right there.
For sure. I mean, especially for these periods of time, anyways. It might be harder for people to get into Naruto now because it's done. So now there's Boruto, Naruto Next Generation.
Mm-hmm.
So there's that, but I just, like, I'm trying to think of like where else to go from it, because like it was very influential in getting me into it, and that was my gateway. I didn't really start getting super back into it again, because there were a few times where I was trying to stay up to date with a manga, and I did that probably like a few years apart from each other. It would be like, oh, Naruto's probably like way ahead now, I should try to catch up, and so I'd like download all the fan translations and stuff and try to catch up a little more. So with that, it kind of like, it'd come and go in waves where I'd be really into it, and then I'd kind of like push it aside, and not as much anymore, not as much into it. And there was a period of time where I was kind of like in denial. I was like, yeah, Naruto's not really that good, and stuff like that. But I was still very appreciative because I was like, but it's the one that got me into anime, so I have a soft spot for it. When I got to college and when Toonami came back in force, they had a huge push that they were having Naruto back on Cartoon Network. And it was going to be uncut, and they were going to do the dub, and that's really great. So it started where me and people from the dorm got together on Saturday nights to watch that. But unfortunately, due to the horrible system of how the TV was streamed on computers, and the fact that the lounge was always taken, we couldn't watch the show reliably.
Mm-hmm.
So we decided we're just going to stream it. And we're just going to watch it that way. We're just going to watch it dubbed that way. So we did. And it was only like me and another friend at that point. Me and just one other person. And my friend Dubs, who I feel like I've mentioned him on the channel before. But we made our way all the way through Naruto over the course of that year. We made it through Naruto Shippuden, and then we kept going after I graduated. He was a couple years younger than me, so after I graduated, we still would get together through Skype, like we're doing now, and we'd watch through episodes of Naruto, and we caught all the way up to like where the anime was basically until it was hitting filler in the middle of the climactic arc, which is really, really sad to say. So we then moved on to other stuff, and we haven't gone back and finished it yet. But that show, because that show has stayed with me over the years like that, that it's just so integral to me as an appreciator of animation. Because we skipped filler while we were watching it. Probably someday when I watch through it again, I'll probably watch, maybe not all the filler, but I'll watch some of it. But it's just so foundational to me as enjoying anime and being introduced to that whole massive, tons of different genres I didn't even realize were a thing. It's very foundational to me as a person, and I mean, I still think about like different things that the anime did that I still get chills about. The opening songs that I really like, that I really jive with. The music of the show, I like. Yeah, it's Naruto is really big for me. I love it. So.
Yeah. So you said it's hard to get into now, but what would you say to me? I've never seen an episode of Naruto. Is it worth watching now?
I'd say it's worth watching. Absolutely.
Like, would you?
If you're, I mean, I would warn people that it's a long form show. That you got to know what you're getting into before you do it. But
so yeah, the biggest thing I've heard is that the filler is what makes it hard for a lot of people.
So that's why you skip it.
Yeah. So see, I'm very anal about. I always watch every episode of anything that I watch. I'm like, I watch everything in order. I don't want to skip anything. So I'm like, how is the filler's really that bad? That's not even worth watching, huh?
Some of it is. Some of it is good. Some of it is generally well regarded by fans.
That's astounding to me. I'm curious to see what makes it so bad.
Because it's cutting. So like towards the end of the show is because it was cutting into the actual story to the point of it being like frustrating to watch because it's just drawing it out almost aimlessly. So it's kind of frustrating that it's cutting into really dramatic stakes and tension and stuff, and then it's just like, and now we're just going to extend it with stuff for a while, and it's just like why are you doing that? I think, like I said, probably some of it is worthwhile, and I want to give it a shot at some point, but because it's not integral to the overall arc of the story, I just say skip it, unless you're a person like yourself, in which case I would just caution you that some of it is probably not very good.
I'm a completionist of television. That's what I am.
Fair enough.
So that's why it makes things hard, like Naruto and One Piece. Even though I love One Piece, from the episodes I've seen, I haven't seen nearly a percentage of them. But because now it's like 800 plus episodes. Now what am I going to do with that?
Yeah.
No way. Yeah. So okay. DBZ, Naruto, two pillars. The shonen family.
Mm-hmm.
So I feel like I should just move on to my next growing up anime pillar, which is Pokemon.
Okay, cool.
There you go. Let's. I mean, I guess it's also kind of a gateway to anime for me, but for some reason Pokemon was always like this separate entity where it's like, that's not anime, that's Pokemon. It's its own thing. I remember because kids were stupid and didn't know any better back then. They would be like, Pokemon's not an anime, is it? I'm like, what? Yeah, it is. That's just Pokemon. That's Pokemon. Because it was like, and it's such a phenomenon, especially the time I was growing up in school, that like everyone loved Pokemon, and around the time where like Pokemon cards and Yu-Gi-Oh cards, but Pokemon cards were prevalent and everything. It was just such a part of the little kid culture, and honestly, it's kind of like the childhood wonder is great about it. This in the imagination of just creating this whole world. And honestly, growing up, I was just obsessed about just the thought of Pokemon being real. Like one of like the also nerdy things that I would do with my brother, because my brother, my brother's responsible for a lot of this as well, because he was older than me and he would watch things like Dragon Ball Z and Pokemon, and that would get me into him.
Mm-hmm.
But we would literally go into Pokemon.com. We would look at the Pokedex entries, and we'd take measuring tape and we'd like do the heights of the Pokemon to see how tall they would be in real life, and we'd be like, "Wow, that's a really big one," and like just like the huge ones that you cannot even measure. And I mean, that's another thing. Just like with the same friend who we were all obsessed about Dragon Ball Z, we were both obsessed with Pokemon as well. We'd have like fake Pokemon battles. Me and my friend, we would always make up like huge stories and narratives together as well of like adventures we go on, and we'd have like we'd have Pokemon that we'd acquire along the way. We'd have to keep track of what Pokemon we had in our own heads, so it was very complicated. But Pokemon was really such a fundamental part of my childhood, and all the way up till now, where through the anime and the games together, it's such a big part of the growing up. And there was a lot of like you really get attached to the characters, and there's a lot of really great emotional moments as well that I really look fondly on, especially the first couple seasons. This is where was the prime Pokemon, and that original voice actor,
the Indigo and Johto journeys.
Yeah. And yeah, it's just I could not have it on this list because I mean Pokemon was such a huge part.
Yeah, I totally get that. Gosh, I think my very first thing that I'm thinking of was like my childhood. Is there's a few things I think about. Nickelodeon was the only thing we got. We didn't get Cartoon Network through my cable for the most part, so I wasn't really ever exposed to things like Powerpuff Girls and Dexter's Lab. I knew they existed, but I was never huge into them. I feel like if I watched them now, I'd really appreciate them and enjoy them. But growing up, my favorite show on Nickelodeon was Doug, of all things. Doug. It wasn't Rugrats. I liked Rugrats a lot, and it wasn't Hey Arnold. I liked Hey Arnold a lot. But Doug was always like my favorite one. I liked the fact that he had an imagination, and he dreamed himself, worlds to escape in, and it would try to help him solve his problems, but more often than not, it was just be Doug daydreaming. But those were fun. I could kind of relate to that a little bit. I liked how it confronted the weird area of adolescence and coming to terms with like growing up, your best friend moving away, dealing with that stuff, trying to interact with a girl that you like, being competitive. It's kind of hitting on like a lot of the sort of little kids shows type of like trying to have sort of helping them with like emotional intelligence type stuff. So dealing with different topics in that way, but like Doug always did it in a way that didn't felt like it was. I'm not saying that like Arthur or anything like that is talking down to them, but like those are clearly geared towards a lot younger audience. Where I would say Doug was more of a ultimately like a middle school audience, because he's in 6th grade and he's dealing with a lot of stuff that people that age would be dealing with. So, but as a little kid, I just really liked it. It was, I guess, maybe something that was like, oh, I'll be able to deal. That's stuff that I'll be able to deal with when I'm older and things like that. I remember thinking about it that way, finding stuff with the imagination of like Quail Man and superhero scenarios and the stuff that he'd be able to come up with creatively. I think it was creative in its constraints because they clearly, you go back and watch it now, they clearly were, and particularly really early episodes, the animation has its ups and downs. There's definitely some mistakes in the animation that you can catch. There's some funky stuff in the animation, but yeah, it was really oh, someone's speeding up.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it was just, I don't know, always really liked Doug. It was just always a really big favorite of mine, and yeah, I guess I just liked how it confronted problems in a, it wasn't like over the top, like his imagined scenarios were the over the top part, but really it came down to dealing with realistic problems in a fun, entertaining way, and it was genuinely funny at times. So
does Doug still hold up today?
I would say so.
Can I get into Doug now? Because I've never seen Doug before.
Can I get into Doug now?
I don't
know.
I've never watched an episode before.
Probably not. Probably if you didn't grow up with it, probably not. I mean, just being honest, but
yeah.
It's a show that's very, very special to me. I've always loved Doug, and the Disney version was okay. It wasn't anything special. It felt very much, it felt very different. But yeah, the Nickelodeon Doug in particular was the one.
Yeah.
Where Billy West actually voiced Doug, and not some random. I don't even know who voiced him in the Disney show, but
poser.
Yeah.
Okay. Well. Oh Jesus. And an earthquake, real quick. Alright, I'll go ahead and admit it. I'm a Cartoon Network fan. Always have been.
There you go.
Maybe won't, but I always have been. I mean, I liked Nickelodeon a lot as well, actually. I watched both growing up. Literally, I would switch. It was usually Cartoon Network first. If it didn't have a show on that I liked, I would switch to Nickelodeon. So both have a lot of really near and dear cartoons. I was even just looking up Cartoon Network, an image of like a bunch of different Cartoon Network shows is on. Like, man, that's a lot of great stuff. And I watched almost all of the ones that were in this image. I'm like, wow. You never really think about how much it's impacted you and how much like it was so prominent growing up. It's like Dragon Ball Z, Pokemon, a whole other world. Meanwhile, we got Cartoon Network over here. And it's hard narrowing it down. Even like outside of Cartoon Network, SpongeBob I really wanted on this list. I was like, I love SpongeBob. It'll always be close to my heart for sure, but when it came down to it, I was like, I want to try to cover everything that I enjoy. And Courage the Cowardly Dog, that's got to be in it.
I'm impressed. I'm impressed because that show is like, it's weird, and it's like almost like not even really for kids.
Right. Exactly, but that's why it was so foundational in my life of television, is because I always was drawn towards weird stuff, being the weird one and the stuff that's a little out there. Courage the Cowardly Dog did that so well, and
it's definitely out there. It's definitely out there.
I think it's really brave for like a cartoon. It did a lot of really cool stuff. It was like actually disturbing stuff. I was like spooked out because they literally live in the middle of nowhere, and they'd have just random people show. Whenever you hear someone knocking on the door, it's like, oh god, something's going on. It's always someone shady, So always someone shady's like, yeah, sure, we have something here. They're clearly shady, but of course the old couple that lives there doesn't know any better. And Courage is just trying to do his best to look out for them. And then Eugene just like, stupid dog, you make me look bad. Yeah. But it's so great. There's not really much to say about it. That's pretty much all there is to it. Is it's the weirdness, the creativity out there, and just like it just does what it's trying to do so well. And like for a children's show, it presented something really unique growing up. And I honestly really want to go back and watch the episodes. I have like the first season on DVD. I haven't gotten around to like rewatching it again, but it's something so cool that it's very hard to find a comparison, something comparable to it in cartoons.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
So you're not gonna put it on the list. I've actually changed my list already again in my mind. So you're not gonna put it on the list, but I will. And that's
Someone's
SpongeBob
gonna do it.
SquarePants. That's SpongeBob SquarePants.
Did it not even come up in your mind or something?
No. So originally I was shifting things around. I want to at least throw out a quick honorable mention. Wallace and Gromit. That was the one where you mentioned claymation. I was like Wallace and Gromit. It's like
No.
that's like a foundational pillar, and it's like
Jesus.
yeah, but not really more than anything else. And I wanted to really talk about Doug because I like that a lot. And that show just doesn't get talked about very much. But yeah, SpongeBob SquarePants I would say is a pillar for me just in terms of humor. I still quote bits and pieces of that show to this day and still find it funny. Like probably maybe even more funny now than I did when I was a little kid.
Yeah.
Just some of the things that show did, just like it really hits my funny bone like really well. It's I don't know. There's something about all of that. It's particularly the first 3 seasons up to the movie.
The movie's so good. The
movie is really good. Post movie SpongeBob kind of had its ups and downs. A lot of downs, some ups.
But he's still SpongeBob.
Post second movie SpongeBob, which I haven't seen the second movie. Post second movie is actually like a new renaissance. I've heard.
Really? I haven't.
Yeah, I actually watched an episode from it, from post second movie, and I was laughing. It was like the first time I was laughing at SpongeBob again, and it was a funny, fun episode. And I was having a good time.
You should watch the second SpongeBob movie. I think it's good.
Yeah, I've heard really good stuff. I've heard, which is interesting, that they pumped up like the CG segments, but like that happens. It doesn't happen till like the last like 20 minutes of the movie or something.
Okay,
it's something like that. That's what I've heard, and I'm like, that's
crazy. We'll talk about it. We'll talk about it next week.
But SpongeBob SquarePants, in terms of just it's so funny. It's dumb. It's dumb, but it's written smartly. I guess if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Kind of like the Simpsons in its way, because the Simpsons like is pretty dumb. But all of the jokes and writing in it are fairly. I don't want to put the Simpsons on the same level as SpongeBob in terms of because Simpsons had a lot of a lot of very funny people, like professional humorists working on it.
But did they have Tom Kenny? Did they have Tom Kenny?
They didn't have Tom Kenny, at least not as far as I know. They didn't have him voicing anyone, at least not for a while. There's something about how that show was written. A lot of care, a lot of craft, in even like really silly, stupid things. Mm-hmm. It just makes me laugh, and it still makes me laugh. And that to me is how it stands the test of time. The fact that I can still find that show as funny, if not funnier, than I did when I was a little kid. That's all I want sometimes in a cartoon is just a laugh, and that show does it. Still does. The older stuff, I should say, it still does.
It's so good. It's so good, and it's wholesome fun. Good wholesome fun. It's hard for me to get into things that are wholesome these days. It's like that's a shining light. And the fact I love things like this where it's definitely a phenomenon, where it was like such a, again, part of culture growing up, and also part of internet culture for sure. SpongeBob is like,
Oh yeah, SpongeBob is like meme culture now. Like
yeah,
you it seems like every year there's a new like still from a SpongeBob episode that's made. Like the Patrick one is like that's like this year's one. I didn't see that before this year. The
what
Patrick
one?
like up on the where he's up on the overhang and he's like looking down. He's got like that creepy, angry looking face. We
Just
have it as a
the creepy, the evil. Yeah, that one. Okay.
yeah, that one.
Yeah,
There
I've
was
seen. That's definitely a good one.
the SpongeBob doing that weird like do one that was used for
I
a while.
dang it.
Like that was a much older one.
I have a
That was probably
shirt.
like 3 years ago.
I have a
You have a
shirt
shirt that has that on?
my mom came home with like some shirts. It was like a couple office shirts, and then there was one that was like, it says "them grow up," and it's like "me grow up" with like the capitalizations
Yeah,
all
with the cap.
different.
Yeah, yep, exactly,
The face.
exactly. That's yeah, I like that. See, that one's fun. That one's like 3 or 4 years old now. So like each year kind of has like their own little SpongeBob one, but
Such good
um,
characters too.
yeah, very funny. That's I think that was where post movie kind of started to die. I think a little bit because the characters became so much more one note than they were before.
Oh yeah.
Or to the point where they like weren't even the same characters anymore. But that's a whole other topic.
But I mean,
But yeah,
it doesn't get much better than SpongeBob and Patrick. Like that's such a great combination.
they're a great duo.
And like Squidward's such a great balance to it too.
The older I get, the more I can relate to Squidward.
And I could never get over the fact that the freaking Krusty Krab was run by 2 employees and one boss. One person cooking everything, one person at the register, and Mr.
Yeah.
Krabs just exists. And then
Here's the thing: the customers order the food. You cook the food. You do that for 40 years, and then we die.
yeah. And oh man, even like the very first episode is so iconic too. Like they really hit the ground running. Great
Help
stuff.
wanted
Yeah.
with living in the sunlight, loving in the moonlight. We had Tiny Tim singing. What a great that's a fun episode.
Only '90s kids will understand SpongeBob.
Only 90s. It was 1999. It was
Yeah.
like in the summer. I actually remember the first episode of SpongeBob that I watched. I was on vacation in Boothbay Harbor, and we'd gone back to the room for something, and we turned the TV on, and it was Pizza Delivery was the first episode. Still probably top 5 SpongeBob episodes for me. I love that
Oh
episode.
yeah.
And just at the moment that I still love is when he's doing all the checks on the boat, and then it's just a dumb, silly like sight visual gag, but then he checks the tire pressure, and he's like huge, and he's floating around, and it still makes me laugh as much as I did when I was a little kid. I remember just having so much fun watching that. So yeah, it's good wholesome fun, and yeah, like you said, it was a phenomenon. That was like Nickelodeon's first major cash cow, because Rugrats was like that was as much marketing as they had gotten before. They'd a couple different theatrical release movies, one of which came after SpongeBob. But yeah, SpongeBob was just like a whole new thing for them. That's yeah, that catapulted that from, I think honestly that's what sort of led them to move to LA. That's where Nickelodeon is now, because it wasn't Orlando, but like they needed more space. They needed a bigger studio, so they moved facilities out there. So
Yeah. So I mean, when we inevitably do our 10 movies that define us, I wouldn't be surprised if the SpongeBob SquarePants movie comes up. Just this is just a cheating way of putting SpongeBob on a list. But I just I love that movie so much. Can never get enough credit.
it's good stuff for sure.
And SpongeBob, one of the best characters ever made. Patrick, one of the best characters ever made. Beautiful, beautiful friendship. All right, so I like how that just came up because I mentioned it, and then it became part of your list.
Yeah, it was. I mean, it was part of my list. It in the fluctuation.
Things are happening.
I had to include that though. Really, like it's too important to my sense of humor to not to.
Mm. Well, along the same vein, I knew I had to incorporate humor into this list. I always have to find some pillar for humor. And for me, I went a different way. I went with Rick and Morty.
Ooh, good
Which
show.
is so good. And one of the first ones in recent memory that I really binged a lot of episodes back to back because I just fell in love with it. I was only like, I think I only started watching it because Blind Wave, a channel I watch, were about to start doing reactions to it. And I was like, and I would, back then I would try out shows before they were gonna react to them, and then like I ended up just watching all the episodes before they're even through season one, and it's just so good. And I mean, it covers my like more adult humor mixed with the animation, and I already feel like I need to rewatch it again. The new season comes out in a few months now, November, but Rick and Morty's, it's so good. It's just really brilliant comedy, a lot of great comedic timing. Great how they incorporate all the different characters, and I don't know. I haven't fallen in love with an animated show that's not an anime. I haven't fallen in love with a show like that in a long time.
Mm.
So Rick and Morty really stood out for me, and I'm glad I hopped on board because it was kind of like a mainstream thing at the time. Where it's like I always kind of, if I'm not on the train before it starts going, I'm more likely to just not jump on at all because I'm like, too mainstream. But I went for it and I'm like, okay, it makes sense now. But now Rick and Morty is the new meme generation, just like
Szechuan sauce,
especially
Morty.
like when season 3, season 2 were airing, it's like all over the place. You can't avoid Rick and Morty's everywhere.
Gotta get that Mulan Szechuan sauce, Morty.
It's just so good. So good. Have you watched it?
So here's a funny thing. This has happened now with 2 or 3 shows. It definitely happened with Bob's Burgers, and it definitely happened with Rick and Morty, where I would see 1 or 2 episodes of those. I've probably saw 3 episodes of Bob's Burgers and 1 episode of Rick and Morty, and I recommended them to people. I was like, these shows are great. You need to watch them. They're very funny. And then I didn't watch a single episode, and then a couple weeks later, it was like, oh hey, I just finished the whole last episode of Bob's Burgers, where I was like, at that point it was probably like 4 seasons long, and I was like, I have seen the same amount of episodes as I did when I told you to watch it. And then that exact same thing happened with Rick and Morty. It's like, oh, I'm through I'm through both seasons, and I was like, and this has happened not just with one person, this has happened with multiple people that I've done this with. So,
Very nice.
So I'm like, you're talking about board the hype train. I'm like the guy like saying, hey, come over here. I'm like a carnival barker, basically, like trying to get people to come on board the train.
Then you forget to hop on yourself.
And then never hopping on myself. Yeah. So
all right, well,
I've seen more episodes of Rick and Morty since. I've never systematically gone through any of the seasons. I've just seen bits and pieces of some episodes.
Oh yeah.
So enough to appreciate how fun and funny the show is.
It's
for
definitely
sure.
worth watching through because they do surprisingly some really cool stuff with like a plot going through the seasons and not just being. For the most part, you definitely can enjoy it on episode to episode basis, but there's some really cool stuff where they tie stuff together.
Yeah.
And just some really brilliant writing all around. It's just
and voice
cool.
acting.
Yeah, and the fact
Justin
that
Roiland is awesome.
yeah, and the fact that so many people, it's always a testament to a comedy like this, that so many people can latch on and really just be out loud laughing to this, and it becomes a phenomenon, just like SpongeBob. It's the modern phenomenon. It's definitely a testament to how effective it is at what it's doing, and it's like there was definitely a market out there for the quote unquote edgy actually cartoons, like
Yeah.
definitely.
I'd say it's edgy. I'd definitely say it's edgy. Yeah.
because there's like subtle political commentary in there. Different, they just like throw it in there, and they'll just say, just like really controversial stuff out of nowhere. But it's
Yeah.
always like, even I watch people watch it that are like not, they're a little more like conservative in terms of like out there stuff, and they'll still be like, oh, that was pretty rough, but I mean, they're still laughing about it. It's something that everybody can just get.
Yeah. I mean, you know me. I'm a little bit more on the conservative side of some things, and yeah, I love that show. It's very
Right.
funny.
I mean, conservative. I meant conservative more in like
Oh, more like they don't laugh.
personality, yeah. Or
It's just
like
like,
reserved.
yes, yes, I
Reserved.
do. Okay, it was like, yes, I do indeed find this quite amusing.
But like reserved as in like, oh my
I
god,
get,
that language.
I get what you're saying.
That language.
Oh my.
Because they'll just straight up start dropping like crude language, hardcore,
Yeah,
but it's so good. So purposely done. Yeah.
good stuff. Huh. Okay, so I think my last two. So I have to put this on here, just because like, much like I'd say kind of similar to Naruto, it is a gateway of some sort. I don't know if I can necessarily describe what.
Just a gateway.
Probably finding that, probably to the gateway that seeing that animation can tackle mature topics and storylines and through plots. So basically, having a whole series that's leading up to a conclusion.
I see where you're going with this. Okay.
And that show is Avatar: The Last Airbender.
Yeah.
It's the storytelling, the world building. It showed me what people who set their minds to it can do in an animated series. I hadn't ever really come across anything quite like that before. There's a magic to that show that hasn't really been matched since, I would say. At least in terms of a Western market. There's a lot of debate between me and you of whether or not Avatar is anime or not. I would say it is Western anime.
Mm-hmm.
But it's, I don't think there's been a Western cartoon that's quite done the same thing for me that Avatar has. I think Adventure Time is fun. I love Adventure Time, though that's actually a show. Again, got on board with the hype train, but I watched precious little of that show compared to how much there is.
Yeah.
But just such an incredible soundtrack. Like I said, the world building, having the magic system in it, the bending of the elements is just such a fascinating, interesting idea, and having like it I think it's great for imagination. I know it got my imagination going, and having set worlds like that, and presenting it to children, with topics about war and revenge and forgiveness and redemption, and like, these are huge things. Like, these are things that like grown people need to still need to learn lessons from, and presenting some of these big topics to kids in a digestible and intellectual manner. I mean, there's plenty of funny moments in Avatar. There's lots and lots of that's rough, buddy.
Mm-hmm.
Among cactus juice and other such.
Cabbages.
My cabbages. Yeah, just what a magical, wonderful show. Like, it's a show that I'm gonna be watching for forever. I'll rewatch that show. year after year. Absolutely, it's so good. So worth your time if you haven't seen it yet. If you haven't, I'm sorry that you've been missing out this long because it's very much worth your time. Um, uh, my mom got into it. If that's anything.
Yeah.
Usually when I can get my mom into a TV show, that's usually a pretty good seal of quality, I'd say. So,
Right. Yeah,
um,
I've never tried getting my mom into an animated show yet.
yeah,
So I always feel like she wouldn't do it. She wouldn't take it seriously.
yeah, we watched through all of that and through the Legend of Korra as well, the sequel series to Avatar, which
Okay.
isn't quite as good. It's still the animation in that show alone is worth watching. If you're like an animation nerd, like if you like watching stuff just animated well, that
Hmm.
is the show to watch. Absolutely. But uh, does some things narratively that I'm not super on board with, and some of the seasons were not great. But Korra is still
Right.
definitely a good watch. It's not going to be a show that I watch again as frequently though, for sure. Avatar is going to be one that I will still. I've rewatched it 2 or 3 times, and it's a show that I'm going to continue to do so with. So, um,
Yeah,
yeah.
I've watched all the Last Airbender like 2 years ago. I watched it for the first time, so
Mm.
that was definitely a great experience. It's definitely world building is the best thing it contributes. It's like you don't
I've
see
never,
that you don't see
yeah,
that kind
never,
of detail in a children's stories world ever.
yeah. So there's a show on Netflix right now called The Dragon Prince,
Okay.
and it's the creators are one of the guys, Giancarlo. I don't remember. I think Giancarlo Volpe or something. I think that's his name. There's a couple of people who were in charge of it. They were in charge of a lot of the writing and some directing of Avatar: The Last Airbender, particularly in the third season. Um, that show has a similar. I love that show as well.
Hmm.
Dragon Prince is definitely a big. I mean, it's not a pillar on my list, but if you're looking for another show to scratch that itch, that is the show to go for. Huge, awesome world building, fascinating magic system. Again, it's different from Avatars, and again, tackling huge topics, grief, uh, dealing with death of a loved one, trauma, assassins, all kinds of fascinating stuff that's tackled geared towards children, and and again, it does it in a way that doesn't speak down to them. It meets them at their level, but also expects them to kind of think about it as well, and awesome writing.
Hmm.
So,
Yeah. So I'm about halfway through Legend of Korra,
mhm.
but it's been a long time since I've watched an episode. I've fallen behind.
Season two, if you're halfway through, season two is kind of a low point, in my
Yeah, I
opinion.
thought so too.
It's pretty
I
bad.
thought season
Uh,
one was a really good start.
I like a
Um,
lot of the stuff season two does, and I still enjoyed it, but there's no denying that it's the weakest season of anything Avatar: The Last Airbender related.
get him,
Easy.
get him.
The third season of Legend of Korra is my favorite.
Yeah, I think it
I,
was early on in season three.
yeah,
So,
it's my favorite. They did some awesome stuff with that one. So,
but yeah, I think
but
that's the thing is like Legend of Korra seems not as good as Avatar for sure, but it's like the same world, so it's hard to go
yeah,
wrong with that.
exactly.
That you're
Yeah.
able to continue that world and especially take it into a different time period is really cool. And get still some references to previous characters, so the world's still tied together and everything.
Hmm.
So there's some cool stuff there. So my last show that defines me is a Japanese animation,
Oh goodness me.
Death Note. Death Note.
Ooh,
Yeah.
good choice. I
So,
see you're a man of culture.
oh yeah. Only people with high IQ can appreciate Death Note.
Yeah, wait till you see my last one though. Then we'll talk about that.
Okay. So Death Note was kind of like a breakthrough in terms of more recent. It was still so long ago that I first watched it, but more recent, definitely in comparison to Dragon Ball Z when I watched it and experienced it, and it was like kind of rejuvenated my love for anime, and it kind of covers that part again of what I love, which is like really smart writing and just like mind games again. Just the way that the Light does everything he does, it's so unique. Again, I don't think I could find anything. I mean, there's things comparable, but not quite at the level of like how that show is handled, where you have literally the main character is an anti-hero, and like you go back and forth between loving him and hating him, and you have the antagonist who is really lovable, and just a lot of cool stuff. And I love the whole rivalry is really cool too.
Yeah.
And I'm not gonna.
Elle is one of my favorite characters in fiction.
Yeah, for sure. And I just think the world's handled really well. The concept itself is such a good one. Just the idea of a Death Note dropping down. And I won't say any spoilers, but episode 25. Never has an episode affected me so much. Like in an anime, that was like one of the big ones for me. I was like, after watching it, I was just like, couldn't believe it. I was just like silent for a while. I'm like, I can't believe this. But so good. There's a lot of really, really good moments in it that I love. And like, I kind of really re-experience it a lot because I love watching reactions to it and just seeing people watch as everything's unfolding, and on an episode to episode basis, there's a lot of really cool stuff.
Yeah. I'd say a show that's comparable. A lot of people compare them.
Code Geass.
No. Well, yeah, to an extent. Code Geass is really great. Code Geass has a lot more. I would say it's more complicated than Death Note, because that show is great. By the way, that's like one of my favorite animes, also. But that show's got mechs. That's got like fan service. It's got political intrigue. It's got action. It's got drama. It's got I'm not going to say what it has. The one I was going to say.
Oh jeez. I forget what episode I'm on, but I'm partway through season 2.
Oh, okay.
I mean, I'd say it's good. I personally don't think it's on the level of Death Note for me, but we'll see how it pans out. No. I'm just wrong. I'm a horrible person.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. Yeah. No. But the show I was going to suggest is it's not as intense, I would say. The great part about Death Note is it's very like over the top. It's very striking. It's very intense.
And the score. So good.
Oh yeah, great music. Monster is another show that's often compared to Death Note, but it's, I would say, a more realistic Death Note, because it's literally set in the real world, and like there's no like supernatural element to it.
Mm-hmm.
But there's as much psychological exploration and mind games and its own form of intensity. It's a more like, I would say I don't want to like come across sounding like snobbish about it. I'd say it's like a more mature sense of intensity. And I don't mean that at all to disrespect Death Note, because this is an amazing show. But I guess what I mean, it's dealing with a lot more real world type of fallouts and psychological stuff. So it's a good show. It's kind of long though, so if you're not into anything long, then but it may possibly be the most faithful show translating a manga into an animation, where it's literally taking almost every shot is like a panel that they've animated from the manga, because the manga is a masterpiece. So if you're gonna adapt it, you might as well make it as masterful as the manga was. So yeah, that's all I'll say about that. But that's a tangent. There's been plenty of those this time. Do you have any other thoughts on Death Note?
No, I think that's it. I mean, just covers that pillar where it's like
Yeah.
I love the just seeing a brilliant mind at work, and in this case, two brilliant minds combating each other.
Yeah.
It's cool.
So my pillar, stake it into the ground here. Neon Genesis Evangelion
Okay.
is what I'm gonna
Okay.
put down. It's what I'm gonna put down as my fifth.
There we are.
It's probably being what's the word?
No idea. Wouldn't know where to begin. So many words I could say.
It's probably being a little bit more riled up now because there's new Evangelion fever, I guess you could say, because the Netflix version just came out recently. There's a whole lot of controversy behind that for various reasons that I won't get into. I want to just talk about the show in general, why it's a pillar. Evangelion's one of the I want to say one of the first shows that I watched all the way through. There was obviously I was getting into Naruto, but I watched through the original Full Metal Alchemist series. I watched through Death Note, and Code Geass, and then Evangelion was one of the other ones. Just because I'd heard it's a staple. I'd seen there's images. It's hard not to have at least heard about that name or heard that name.
See, yeah, the only thing I know about the show is the name.
And that's the thing, is I knew the name and I knew it was like it's a foundational thing. It's like it's what started to get. It's like it was in that Dragon Ball craze. It was like the other big one that was getting anime super big and super popular. So it's one that I watched and I really enjoyed. I never followed up with its companion film, The End of Evangelion. And I feel like when I made it through the whole series again in college and watched that with it, that's when it really hit me how much how much that series, how interesting it is, how kind of it's not despite what it might seem, it is not at all a typical show in any sense of the word. It's like pretty much an art house show that somehow catapulted to mainstream recognition. Well, somehow, because the writing is very good. There's just so much intrigue and mystery in a lot of the show. A lot of the world building is done that's really good. Some of it is going to be so confusing that you'll probably have to do searches on wikis and stuff. So it got me having to piece stuff together myself until I could figure out exactly maybe not necessarily what it all meant, but at least how it all sort of comes together as a whole. And then from there, analyzing what it means. There's a lot, as long as you're paying attention to the show, I would say it does a good job of communicating what it's about to the viewer. A lot of very good visual storytelling, a lot of good editing, a lot of good understanding the characters as people. Is something that the show does very well. As a lot of the show is focused on not just what's literally happening, but the psychological, the internal struggles and mental states of the main characters. And the show just does a lot of things that shows have tried to match since, but because it was, I guess, because it was one of the first to sort of do that, it's arguably the anime that changed the industry forever. Because of just because of the merchandising that happened as a huge result of it, the huge craze of figures that came out above Evangelion. You can't go to a convention and not find Evangelion figures even today. And it was a phenomenon when it was around in Japan when it first aired. It was still continued to be one until end of Eva. Then with the rebuild films, it's just continued to still have mass appeal, even though those films are pretty divisive among fans of the original series. But all that aside, because of its tackling of very personal, introspective type stuff, it's art house type things, it sets itself apart from its contemporaries and even from anime these days as well. And so I guess just because it helps, it's a show that like really wants you to self-reflect a lot. That's kind of what it wants its audience to do. Is that's not necessarily going to happen, but I think that's really what was being asked of the audience to do.
Mm-hmm.
And because of that, it's a show that I'm gonna continue to keep coming back to and analyzing and watching for ever, probably, just like Avatar. So yeah, that's a staple right there.
I'll have to check it out sometime.
You will have to. You should. A lot of thoughts about that Netflix dub though.
Yeah.
So
I've heard.
A lot of thoughts.
So I've heard. So that's.
But I think that'll about wrap it up there.
That's the 10 animated television programs that define Tarqaron. No overlap.
Amazing.
Could have been SpongeBob, almost.
Yep. Yeah, almost
but
did.
If I mentioned SpongeBob, you wouldn't have had SpongeBob on your list, probably.
I might not have. I don't know.
If I said it,
but it is a little too funny to. It's like I said, it's almost too funny not to include for me.
So yeah. So yeah, Death Note with the mind games, Courage the Cowardly Dog with the weird games, Ricky and Morty, the funny stuffs, Pokemon, Imagination and Wonder, Dragon Ball Z.
Good stuff. I'm not gonna recap mine because honestly, I'm very tired right now.
Wow. Well, that's gonna be
I had a really long day, and I was getting killed out in 95-degree weather with like 100% humidity or whatever it was.
Same here. I died actually several times.
Oh, cool.
I actually never sweated more. It's been a long time since I've sweat as much as I did today.
Wow. Yeah. I have to work outside with long sleeves on all day, so it's and pants, heavy pants. So yeah, it's
cool.
Yeah, I sweat a lot every day.
There's nothing better than the feeling of laying down on a bed after 12 hours of physical labor, right? The feeling when you just hit it. All right, so that's gonna be it.
Yeah, it's a different video. We're all set.
I mean, if you want to check out a recent video we did, Extremely Wicked. No, we
check out some of our other Define Us episodes. We've got some video games and some live action TV shows, so you can check those out.
Yeah. Who knows what will be next?
Who knows? We've already mentioned one in this episode.
Go watch our Spider-Man Far From Home review.
Sure, do it. Go see it. If you haven't seen it already, be prepped for spoilers. That's all.
They're calling it the best movie since
Avengers Endgame.
Yeah, yeah. All right, that's gonna be it. We'll check you out next time.
See ya.